morning, you guys. I'm going to AEW Revolution in Los Angeles, and I do want to say that I'm really excited for this show. And then also, it's a very important day for me because I'm going to go to Tokyo. My flight leaves at 12:30 a.m. But the show should get out around 9 p.m. So hopefully Tony Khan, that motherfucker, doesn't keep the show running on too long because I'm gonna have to leave a little bit early. And I do want to mention that my trip to Tokyo means a lot to me. It's my lifelong goal. I'm 38. This is almost like my passage into middle age. I've worked very hard. I've worked over 14,000 hours on my hospital job, helping out people, making atonement for my sins. And I learned a lot of stuff over the years that, obviously nobody's there to save you. Sometimes we have support systems that help us or hurt us, but we got to build ourselves upwards. I learned that I got to learn to let things go. And I also just kind of learned that, we all deserve a good life. Even if we hurt a lot of people and we hurt ourselves a lot, we're all going to die one day. So, make that journey, important. I've traveled to all 50 states. Going to different AEW shows around in different states has helped me achieve that. I feel a lot more happier with my life. I know who I am. I'm a hard worker. I'm a traveler. And I believe in atonement, so I got my life figured out after just being lost and sad for many, many years. No matter what we go through, we deserve a good and happy life. And for the show, I really have to mention that there's only really 4 matches that I want to see. Texas Death Match. So it's going to be epic. It's going to be brutal. I like the stipulations because you don't know where it's going to go, really. And I'm hoping that MJF wins. He's done a lot of rebuilding of the company, setting up feuds and storylines, rebuilding the heavyweight division. There's also a rumor that he's doing some acting projects, so I'm a little worried that they might do something where they might take the title off of him for a month or two, and I think that would kill the company because you can't just keep, when there's some good momentum, you got to keep it going real. John Moxley versus Konosuke Takeshita. I know some people say Takeshita. I think it's Takeshita. That's how they pronounce it in AEW. But they both have great matches. It goes as long as it needs to, really. And I want to see Konosuke win because obviously he's a very hard worker. He's a badass. The Blue Thunder Bomb is one of my favorite moves. And he has a really bright future. And I think that they need to pull the trigger. I think I want to see Okada versus Konosuke at Dynasty. And then they could do something where he gets out of the Don Callis family and they go from there, really. I think that part of Moxley and Konosuke's issue is that they need to kind of just have a lot more... they have to have a lot more momentum. They got to put some... fire on their feud, really. They got to just say Moxley might be betrayed by the Death Riders. Konosuke might be betrayed by the Don Callis family. Let's start to create that. Let's create that. The next match that I want to see is Andrade versus Bandito. Bandito's like the Rey Mysterio of AEW. He has great matches. Andrade's been in a career renaissance. He's doing a lot of really great stuff. He kind of is a playboy. He had a great match at New Japan Pro Wrestling in Trenton, New Jersey. I lived in Connecticut, played hooky, went down there and saw it. And then also, too, he's having a career renaissance being the playboy and everything like that, really. So I really think that, these two people care about great performances. We're going to see some really, really great stuff out of these guys. So, those are 3 matches I want to see. There's also Brody King versus Swerve Strickland. Both of them are really big, badass motherfuckers. And I'm happy that Brody King is actually not a tag team wrestler anymore. He needs to do a lot more shit where he's actually just, he needs to do a lot more shit in the company, and he needs to kind of, maybe he's a big man, he's athletic, he can do a lot of really crazy stuff, really, so let's just watch how he goes. But Swerve is somebody, I think, who needs to win, because Brody King, you can kind of make him a champ, you can kind of make him a champion or face the championship, maybe in a couple of more months, really. He just had an opportunity in Australia, but I think that Brody King will be fine. If he's in the Owen Hart tournament getting some victories, I think that would be good for him as well, really. But I do think that Swerve needs to win. If you do Swerve versus MJF at Dynasty, I think then you have a really great show there. want to review AEW Revolution. So I do want to mention that, officially, yeah, I've made my flight, but there's one more obstacle. Actually, two more obstacles. Unfortunately, I hurt my leg. So I've been limping throughout the airport. So hopefully, nothing happens where, they have to remove me and force me to get medical attention. With AEW Revolution, I thought about it for a little bit. It's definitely a B+ in my book. There's a lot of positives, and there's a lot of repetition. And I just want to go over what I liked about the match card. That I think the first thing is that I liked how there was a bunch of title changes tonight. But I did find it almost like Tony's favorites, like Mystico winning a title. So I want to also just start with the matches. I think that the first match I want to talk about is the Texas Death Match between MJF and Hangman Adam Page. It went, I think, close to an hour. And I was a little annoyed with it because I was saying, oh, come on, get to the finish. Come on, get to the finish. There was a point where they fell off the stage through pyro. And I thought to myself, what would have happened if they had a 10 count and they were both count out? That would be interesting if it ended like that, really. But the positives is that they did a bunch of different stuff, and it felt like a Texas death match, because I remember when I was watching TNA Wrestling, it was Santana versus, I think, Frankie Kazarian or somebody in a Texas death match. And it felt like, they had a bit of a ladder spot. They had a bit of fighting the crowd. It didn't feel like a Texas death match. They fought in the arena a little bit. They went down to the ring. They used different weapons. They used glass. They used a syringe. And I'm okay with them using a syringe because obviously that ties into what Hangman did. They use barbed wire boards because that's kind of and Hangman wraps MJF with barbed wires. That's kind of a tie-in to how he won it all in. And I think when they do that stuff, it's kind of almost like saying, it's psychological warfare in a way, because you're kind of seeing MJF saying, hey, I'm gonna hurt you the same way you hurt other people, or and there's a lot of taunting, because that's one thing with MJF, that when he taunts people, he's trying to get into people's heads, really. And some people may say it's him being silly, but it's him taunting because that way he gets in people's heads. But the other part of it is because obviously in professional wrestling, there's not a lot of people who know how to use comedy and make it effective. And MJF is kind of like a smart ass, the ultimate smart ass. Because honestly, if he gets in your head and he pisses you off, really, it distracts you. He's trying to be a mental distraction. That's how some people like him work, because he's a sociopath. So I feel the story that they told by doing okay, you know what? You talked about dog collar match and bring up the dog collar thing. Oh, well, you use a syringe, so I'm going to use a syringe. Oh, well, you know what? We use weapons we use in other matches on each other. I felt that it was really good. I think one thing I didn't like about tonight was that there's way too many near counts. A lot of 2 counts, near falls. And AEW does that a lot, but the problem is that not every match should be like that. Sometimes you need that 1, 2, 3 or a squash, really. But yeah, it's definitely something that we have to think about, because you can't always kind of, if you do that way too much, that's not good. I also felt that I appreciate what they did, because the match before it was the Dogs versus the Conglomeration with Darby Allin. But in the match before them, it was a tornado tag. There was some blood, and there was some blood throughout the show, but I didn't see a hardcore match or crazy stuff. The crazy thing happened at the very, very end of the night, really. And that helps the show, because otherwise in old AEW wrestling, it'll be 3 or 4 matches, really. But I think that the level of violence was appropriate for a Texas death match. I'm okay with the ending with Hangman not winning. I'm also happy because I was predicting that the Hurt Syndicate was going to come back and help MJF. And I'm happy that that didn't happen, because you need to have your champions, your heel champions, win clean. Not like Robert Roode and Team A wrestlers cheating every single time. Or, as we said, I'm a little sick of factions. So we have to kind of get to a point where it's not faction in AEW. The other match that I liked was
it was like Okada, Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis versus Mystico and Jet Speed. So I have mixed feelings about this match. Like honestly, like Jet Speed did a great job. Mystico, like he really stole the night. He had a really great performance. And it's also revealed that Mystico is actually part of AEW now. And I think I have mixed feelings because obviously that's why he won, because obviously Tony Khan blows his favorite wrestlers. If you're one of Tony's boys, you know what Tony blows you really. He's gonna give you like all the honor, all the titles and everything like that really. So I'm a little worried because I think the Don Callis family, they should easily get the titles back, or the trios titles should be kind of like very interchangeable. It should not be something where somebody has it for a super long time, because I kind of fear if that happens really, that there's so many good trios teams in AEW really. So I really think that there needs to be feuds, and there needs to be like, okay, we need to make this team strong, like Dalton Castle and the Outrunners, the Don Callis family, the Dogs, Darby Allin, and the Conglomeration. You can even do like a few, like 3 people in Don Callis, another 3 people in Don Callis family. But there's so much like shit that there's so many teams. There's so much shit that they can do with so many different teams in AEW. So I think that I really, really pray that that actually they utilize their trios division, because they have a really big trios division. But I will say that it was a good match. It was a really great showing of these guys. I'm actually liking Mark Davis because he was kind of like the big man of the group really. So I really felt that with Mark Davis, he was really that powerhouse guy. And I've said this with AEW, that one of the biggest problems they have is they don't book big men that well really. And if you're in a trios group and there's 2 like high flyers, you need like that big man to show that he's a big man, like him giving people power bombs and pile drivers. That is what a big man should do. So it was a match that I really enjoyed. Another match I enjoyed was Bandito versus Andrade. So like when Andrade and Bandito, they kind of have like a Playboy type of thing. Like I think some people who were speaking Spanish say like El Sexo or whatever, like El Sexy or whatever, they're kind of having fun with it. So I think that, as I said before, and as I said again, they have to be a little bit careful, because you don't want to kind of run into like comedy too much. There's some wrestlers that comedy works for. There's some wrestlers where it should be more serious, or there should be more like competitiveness. Because I think like the story they need to tell is, should Andrade become the Ring of Honor champion? Because Bandito's been holding the title for a very long time. Andrade won the match really, so maybe that's the next thing for Andrade really. The next match that I liked was the Young Bucks and versus FTR, because I felt like it won a good duration, and it was a good opening match. So I really just it's like a bunch of flipping moves. I also appreciate that they had their kids in the ring. That's kind of cool, because one of the Young Bucks' daughters could actually do a bunch of flips like them really. You never know if that's going to be like a future star in 20 years or something like that. But and I know like they're trying to tell a story where the Young Bucks are not baby faces. Their family's been attacked. They're trying to like get revenge really. It doesn't completely work with me, because they kind of been like kind of entitled douchebags for a very, very long time. So it doesn't really get to me that they're like baby faces. But I think the one thing that I liked is that FTR won, and then they're trying to get to FTR versus Edge and Christian for the AEW championships. And I actually think that that's actually where they should go really, because I think the Young Bucks FTR, that's been going on for a very, very long time. Yeah, then the other match that I liked on the card, was Swerve Strickland versus Brody King. It was a really good match. It was a very hard-hitting match. I think anytime that Brody King wrestles, and he wrestles different opponents, it's definitely, good to show his versatility. And I like him and he's also a good wrestler in a lot of ways, because Swerve did a lot of like lifting of Brody King. He did a vertebreaker on Brody King and other things like that. So it's good, because it shows like how strong these wrestlers are when you lift and throw a big man around. But then you also have a big man that's actually doing a lot of offense. Like I don't think that Brody King is coming off like Brian Cage, where he loses too quickly. He's kind of like the right big man. He can win some, he can lose some. But he's also being thrown around or things like that. So it shows just how strong Swerve is. Like a lot of people are going, whoa, and holy shit, when they saw like Swerve lift Brody King a bunch of times. But, and I think like the other matches were decent. There's not like one that was kind of like really, really bad. And I was also very, very proud of the pacing. Like, I think like when they did Tekla versus Statlander in a 2 out of 3 falls match, I was happy that went a good duration. Takeshita versus John Moxley was another match that I really enjoyed. They went like I think about like 20 to 30 minutes, but then other matches were like 10 to 15 minutes, so it didn't feel like it didn't feel like, oh well, this is gonna be until 2 a.m., 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. They kind of knew that, okay, well, 12:30, maybe an extra half an hour appropriate, but because this is one of the big shows of the year. But if this was just like, all the time, really, it would have been kind of like, like, let's hurry this up a bit. But Takeshita and Moxley did a really great job, and I was actually kind of like really, really surprised that Takeshita lost, but it is what it is, really. And I think that's one thing I'm liking about AEW now, is that they're trying to be very, very unpredictable. And it's interesting because the Don Callis family, they lost all their titles tonight, no, like Takeshita could have been the Continental Champion. He didn't get that. They lost the Trios title, so it's just Okada with the International title. So Don's obviously going to have something to say about that. But they had a really great match. Anytime Moxley and Takeshita wrestles, it's really great. And I'm not sure how many times they wrestled. I believe like they wrestled once in Ohio, and now this is the second time. So you may have to do something like, okay, we're gonna have one final match, and it could be like a hardcore stipulation, like Takeshi's like saying, you know what, I want to beat you, but I want to beat you at your own game, really, like the hardcore stuff, and that could be a good ending, really. But I really think that I'm kind of concerned in a little bit, like what's gonna be, like Takeshita is a babyface. And he's getting pissed off by Okada, really. So what story are you going to tell about when you're going to get to Okada versus Takeshita, and they have a match series, and they kind of get to that? I think that's where they need to go, but I think they're making it simmer a little too long. But overall with the show, I think the positives outweigh the negatives. I really had a lot of fun. It was a great trip. I'm off to Tokyo, and hopefully my trip will work out. I'm happy to take you along for the journey of like the past couple of days. It's been a lot of fun.
I thought I could never ever do something like this. I feel like one of the baddest motherfuckers that has ever walked the earth because I've done this. And I have a traveling phobia. So this is me accomplishing my American dream. This is me digging really deep inside myself. This is me believing in me. This is me that this morning I was seeing a post by somebody who was a filmmaker in Connecticut, was tearing me down, making me feel like crap years and years ago. And you know what? Fuck him. And he even told me, you know what? Traveling's ridiculous. You got to be just working with me, getting better. Fuck him. I'm actually here being Byron Andreas, being the best version of myself, accomplishing those badass Herculean goals. I'm traveling over 10,000 motherfucking miles in 2 weeks. This is me being me, and I feel so empowered. I feel like there's an energy out here that's gonna change me forever just because I've accomplished a goal. This is a lifelong goal that I'm doing, one of the happiest days of my life, and I'm happy to immortalize it with everybody. I'm happy that my energy is here, and I'm going to take an energy with me. So, keep accomplishing those goals. Sometimes it takes years or decades to get to a place. Sometimes you have to go through hell for years and years, work hard for years and years, and overcome that hell to get to rewards like this. So, I'm happy to share this monumental moment with all of you.
Arigato. So officially, I arrived in Tokyo, and it's exciting to be alive without a life goal. That this is the number one goal that I've ever wanted out of my life, is to be in Tokyo, and it's definitely very, very moving. I do feel like
I did something that was impossible to me. So sometimes when you feel that way, you have a sense of like, wow, like, I can do anything really. And, I really want to thank, my parents because, my parents, they're kind of like a little strict with me growing up. I know I've kind of bitched about that a lot, but it's really helped me out. Like, especially as I was walking around the streets, I was being respectful, I was being disciplined. Um, I got lost a little bit and I was frustrated, but I was always kind of raised too, you stay until you fix it. So that's always kind of, been about me. Like a lot of people I meet don't travel a lot because they're like, wow, that just feels like I'm going to a new dimension or whatever. It takes a lot of patience and it takes a lot of care of learning new things. I do want to say that with AEW, it's inspired me to accomplish a couple of life goals. Like honestly, to go from the Los Angeles show to Tokyo. Now, I had a goal to visit all 50 states, and I accomplished that. Like they had a show in Michigan, they had a show um, in Las Vegas, but I spent 2 days in Arkansas. Um, I remember when Adam Copeland debuted. I spent a few days in Hawaii, and then no, what happened was I went to the Michigan show, the Grand Rapids show. I flew to Oregon for a few days, went to Voodoo Donuts because I love my donuts. I flew to Honolulu for a few days, and then I flew to into Washington, and then I knocked off a couple of states. WWE had an NXT show in Clarksville, Tennessee. I took a Uber into Kentucky, had a Jim Cornette Dairy Queen, lunch, and then I went back really. I know one time they had a show at the UBS Arena. It was like Will Osprey versus Swerve Strickland, and I spent a couple of days in Oklahoma after that. Really, so like AEW is definitely inspired my goals, and it's actually funny because the big reason why I started watching AEW was because of Max Caster, Anthony Bowens, and the Acclaimed and everything like that. Really, so yeah, AEW does have a place in my heart. And some people may say it's like bullshit wrestling, but yeah, it's definitely kind of given me the experience to travel. Really, I went from a man in my early 30s that was, that needed to grow up a lot. That just had to understand that and not, you're not gonna have the right support system. Sometimes you got to hustle. Sometimes you got to do lie, cheat, and steal to get what you want. Sometimes like I'm sometimes I'm a little tax exempt. I gotta work on that really. Sometimes you gotta take some shortcuts, but most of the time it's just hard work, dedication, turning your life around, taking accountability for your actions really. And that's something my therapist taught me. Even though we left on bad terms, my therapist taught me the importance of accountability. It doesn't matter what goes on in my head, it doesn't matter the trauma and your other bad experiences, the depression, the sadness, the mood swings in my brain really. I'm still accountable for who I want to be. So, in addition to this being a video about professional wrestling, I'm happy to share that my life goal is accomplished.